Hello, this is Anne for American Literature 1. I'm sorry, American Literature 2. And I wanted to just do a kind of a review of realism and an introduction to modernism. And I wanted to make the point that all these isms that we have for period pieces, we try to categorize literature into a social period, and they're not usually just lines drawn and something is in one ism and something else is another. Often the line melds and blends and blurs. So a lot of our pieces fall between those cracks. But just so that it helps us to be able to categorize and group things according to some elements. Um, One thing that really helps us to see the difference in, between two isms is art. And in the center of your Norton anthology, you'll see several pieces collected that make really quite an easy to understand definition between the two. Um, so what I'm talking about is in your book, in the Norton Anthology, this period from 1865 to 1914, this is in the center art, all the glossy pages in the center of your book. One of the first ones you'll see here is The Modern Samson by Thomas Nast in 1868. And this is in the realism section because it's about historical events. It's a political cartoon making a comment on real issues. We've got everything's standing, everything's symbolic. But in the back here, you'll see it's a criticism of the black male vote for ex-slaves, and we see Delilah here, taking the hair from the Samson, and we see in the background caricatures of actual political figures of the time, making that kind of point. So, if you turn to the next page, I wish I could get closer here to point these out, but we've got Snap the Whip by Winslow Homer, 1872, and it's very much in the mode of realism with the barefoot boys on the grass, near photographic, but much artier than photographic. This next one I want to show you is a photograph. If you can see it here, it's got a glare. And it's children sleeping in Mulberry Street, 1890. That glare, I think, is too much, but it's actual Irish immigrant children sleeping out of doors, homeless children. So again, the realism of harsh reality. The next we have is William F. Cody. A lot of portraiture is in the category of realism. And this next one is a John Singer Sargent portrait from 1888. And a lot of realistic, so real, it's actual photography. We've got Edward S. Curtis, 1904, and Mary Coulter, 1905, photographing actual Indian dwellings. And then we have Indian artists that start to look a little bit more modern. We've got Women Watching a Sundance by Amos Badhart Bowl. These are undated. And look how modernistic this one is, by Kills 2, an Indian horse dancer. We lose any idea of a photographic depiction, and we get kind of the blurred Indian horse dance, the blur of motion. This one I find interesting, and if we ever want to talk about naturalism, which we spoke of in the last semester, we've got the members of this club, George Bellows, 1909, and here we see it's realism, but it also shows that naturalistic tendency towards the dark side. It's the survival of the fittest, where one side or the other is not going to survive. The way it's read here in the description, both members of this club, Bellows creates an atmosphere not of athleticism, but of defeat, with both boxers reduced to mere entertainment for the grotesquely leering crowd. And if you can see, we've got pictures in here of just they're subhuman, they're closer to animal. It's not a good feeling for this depiction of naturalism. And then we have a bit of American Impressionism. Manhattan's Misty Sunset, Childe Hassam, 1911. And, we see kind of a polluted sky, not much light. The editors of the book say it's punctuated by barely visible streetlights. The drizzle and fog suggest an ambivalence toward industrialism, toward industrial America. I'm really having a problem with that glare. This one is famous. And now you'll see that this is beginning the modernism period, 1914 to 1945. And look at the stark difference between what we've been looking at for realism, and we see something that if we didn't have the title here, we might not know what this is. The title is Nude Descending a Staircase. And it combines Cubism's technique of representing objects in multiple perspectives with the late 19th century multiple exposure photography, innovations in photography, which were the precursor to motion pictures. So trying to picture human motion. But as I said, if we didn't have the title, we might be hard put to say what this is. And this is modernism, where those lines of what is real and what is not, they begin to blur or expand, some people would say. Here's another one. If we think of modernism as being fragmented and blown apart, we just get a compilation of colors and stripes and textures and some icons. This is from 1914, and the title of this is Portrait of a German Officer. by Marsden Hartley. Do you see a German officer here? Do you see a face? Do you see a man? No, but we see all of the fractured bits that come together to represent that man. So we've got the fractured and blown apart concepts of modernism. Here's another 1919, 1920. It's called Golden Bird. Again, if we weren't told, we might not all agree that this would come to represent a bird for us. To me, it feels more like a feather, perhaps, or a flame. Beautiful. At least it's beautiful, but it is again just one piece or fragment representing a concept. We've got more here with Archibald J. Motley, 1934, Black Belt. This coincides with Langston Hughes' poem that's in our text later. Let's think of this when we get to that poem. And here, Charles Sheeler, 1932, River Rouge Plant, is a representation of futurism. Kind of a different feel to it than the industrialism of that impressionist painting we just saw. One of the most famous is probably this one. And this is Nighthawks, Edward Hopper, 1942. It says, Hopper's painting represents the nightlife of loners in the city. Its stylized realism preserves traditional perspective, accentuated by the deep view through the restaurant's large plate glass window, but simplifies both realistic detail and painterly brushwork. But it may be realistic, it may be in the category of realism for a city street view, but there is the loneliness, the despair of the modern point of view. Goes well with Hemingway stories and Philip Marlowe film noir detective stories. Okay, anyway, I just thought this might help to see there is a stark line between the two definitions, but the literature we are dealing with does not often, always anyway, fit into one or the other. There's a lot of gray area and overlap.